Welcome to Season 2 of Bards Atlas. Tonight's story was inspired by a painting created by Christopher Balaskas. Enjoy.
Incoming message. New database submission imminent. Bard designation.
Eli.
Log ID.
Log 3225-14. Subject: The Shape of Love.
Compiled. Begin submission.
Long ago, the kingdom to the east was caught in a state of tense anticipation. The beloved king and queen of the land had fallen ill and passed away. Now the throne was to be passed on to one of their 4 children, but how to choose the rightful successor? As tradition dictated, each potential successor would be brought before the royal guardian spirits, and it would be there, in their omniscient presence, that each candidate would be given a single test. Fail the test, and the answer would be clear. Succeed, and the land would have its new ruler. With the death of the king and queen, the time soon came for the 4 children to make their way to the guardian spirits in their domain deep within the ivory forest. Together, the 4 siblings bid their kingdom farewell, promising that they would return with one of them crowned the next ruler. And together, they left. Now, the journey through the ivory forest is long and, at times, arduous. So it was to be expected that before long, the 4 siblings began traveling at their own independent pace. The eldest child was a strong athlete, and he had the least trouble moving quickly and efficiently. The 2 middle children were less experienced and tired easily, but they were close sisters and kept each other company while maintaining a respectable speed through the woods, trying to keep up with their older brother as much as possible. The youngest child was considerably young, barely a decade old by the time he was tasked to travel on this important voyage. His siblings had taken time to teach him how to use a bow and arrow and hunt for food along the journey, but beyond this, they left him alone. "We are sorry, Benson," said one of his sisters. "We do not wish harm to befall you, but what if the test has already begun? What if the spirits wish to measure our punctuality?" Benson did not mind too much. His siblings were strong, cunning, and noble in their own ways. Any one of them would make a fine ruler for the land, and he could understand the anxiety that they must have been feeling. Moreover, given his age and inexperience in the world, Benson knew that he would not be the one to pass the spirit's test. He would show up only to fulfill the obligation of tradition, and to support his siblings along the way, of course. Besides, the journey itself was quite enjoyable, and he was not completely alone, for his young friend and companion Gus would be by his side the whole way. "Why do you insist on bringing that silly creature with you?" dismissed his brother at the start of their journey. Benson smiled as the orange-striped cat pounced delicately onto his shoulders, ready for the trip ahead. "Gus likes to travel too," said Benson. His brother merely shrugged, annoyed. "He is a house cat, not a forest cat. He'll only slow you down." Benson massaged the spot behind Gus's ears and muttered, "Don't listen to him, buddy. He's just nervous about the spirit's test." Sure enough, the oldest sibling was nervous. So nervous that he was only slightly comforted to find that he had arrived at the spirit's domain first. An ancient, wrinkled tree stump sat as the only landmark. But the family crest, carved into its ringed wooden surface, was more than enough confirmation that he had, indeed, found his destination. He was patient enough to wait for his 2 sisters. They arrived later that afternoon, a little tired from the day's journey, but excited. Politely, the 3 siblings then decided to wait for Benson as well. But when he did not show up until the sun had already set, they were all a bit peeved. "Now it is too late to see the spirits. We will have to make camp and speak to them tomorrow," Sorry, apologized Benson. Gus got stuck in a tree and I had to help him get down. Oh, Benson, chided one of his sisters. Our eldest brother is right. Why did you take him with you? Benson sighed, looking sheepish. He was a gift from Mother and Father. He's been with me for a long time, even after they died. His siblings softened at this. Oh, Benson, said his other sister. We're sorry. I miss them too. But Father and Mother are gone, and we must focus on the future. You will have plenty of time to play with Gus when we return, and then you can get many more gifts as well. Perhaps even a friend for Gus too? His older sister smiled. Now that's an idea. I say that whoever passes the spirit's test and becomes our next ruler must get us all gifts as a consolation prize. They all laughed, even the eldest, despite the obvious signs of worry etched onto his face. When morning came, Benson's brother was the first one to awake. Quietly, the four siblings cleaned up camp, and then it was time. Good luck, brother, the three younger siblings wished. The oldest gave them a curt nod, and then continued down the path. The other three waited behind, wondering just how long the spirit's test would take. They were startled, of course, to then see their oldest sibling returning to them not 10 minutes later. Sure enough, there he was. He didn't look tired or defeated, but he also didn't look pleased or satisfied. He looked dazed, as if distracted by something. Brother, you have returned so soon, exclaimed the eldest sister. Yes, it was not too difficult. They asked a question. Well, what question? Their brother looked off into space with a vacant expression for several moments. Then he frowned. You know, I don't remember. Benson hurried forward. Brother, you look confused. What's wrong? His brother slowly sat down, still looking off into space. Benson, I feel as though I have just seen something beautiful, but I can't remember what it was. The spirits, maybe? Asked the younger sister. Their brother merely shrugged and continued to sit in silence. He did not even seem to notice when Gus climbed up and nestled into his lap, purring casually. The older sister looked off towards the path with apprehension. He does not remember what the test was. Perhaps he failed it? The younger sister said nothing, also looking rather worried. Benson hesitated. Well, only one way to find out. The older sister looked at Benson incredulously, and then looked back at the path, understanding. It's this way, brother? The older brother nodded absent-mindedly. Yes, there's an old woman there who will point you in the right direction. The older sister frowned, and then headed forward. Benson stayed with his other two siblings, helping his sister to offer their eldest brother something to eat. I'm not hungry, their brother said, still distracted. Why can't I remember what I saw? Why can't I remember what they showed me? Benson and his sister did not really know what to say. 15 minutes went by this time before the oldest sister returned. She, too, looked dazed and placid, but there was a slight smile on her face. Do you remember? Please tell me you remember, asked the younger sister worriedly. Remember what? The test. You saw the spirits, right? Yes. The spirits. They showed me something wonderful. The younger sister's frown deepened. But you don't remember what it was? The older sister just shook her head. No, but it made me happy. Happier than I have felt in a long time. The younger sister took in a deep breath. Well, I suppose... She did not finish. Benson took her hand and gave it a quick squeeze. It'll be okay. Do you want to take Gus with you? She shook her head. No, thank you, Benson. I'll be back in a bit. She then looked at her older sister. Brother said there was an old woman who would tell you where to go? Their older sister shook her head. I did not see an old woman, but there was an old man. I didn't really talk to him. The younger sister nodded her head. She then gave Benson another nervous look. He shot her a quick smile of support. She gave him one back and then made her way down the path. Benson sat with his two eldest siblings by the tree stump, waiting as quietly and patiently as he possibly could. Gus was now lounging in the grass, basking in the sun. And just as the sun reached the highest point in the sky, Benson saw his sister returning. She had clearly been crying. Benson shot up and ran to her side. What happened? Are you okay? But she was smiling. Crying, but smiling. Benson's eyes widened. You don't remember, do you? As a single tear rolled down her cheek, she smiled and shook her head. They're waiting for you, she said softly. She then walked over and sat down next to her other two siblings. Benson stared at them, open-mouthed. They were all lost in thought, sitting passively in the grass, squinting in the sunlight at something they couldn't see. Guys, Benson began. I don't think I can do this. If you didn't pass their test, how can I? To Benson's surprise, his brother just shrugged without concern. It's okay, Benson. Just go speak with them and come on back. And then we'll all leave together, okay? I'm sorry you didn't pass the test. His siblings looked over at him, and then at each other. I'm sorry we can't remember what we saw, said his oldest sister. It was truly lovely. Benson grimaced. For whatever reason, it didn't sound lovely. Come on, Gus. Let's go. Let's go take this test. Gus meandered his way over to Benson's side, and together they moved down the path. It was a narrow dirt path that sloped gradually downward, tented in the dense overgrowth of ancient trees on either side. Benson walked down the path, trying to peer through the trees for even a glimmer of what it was he was about to see, but to no avail. Finally, after several dozen steps, the path curved around and Benson could make out a distinct aura of sunlight filtering through from it. There was a clearing just around the corner. This was likely the spot. Benson took in a deep breath. Okay, let's do this. He strode around the corner and entered the clearing, and then he stopped. It was certainly an impressive sight, a domain worthy of ancient spirits. A wide, open-aired clearing in the forest basked in the high noon sunlight. Mounds of strange stone carvings dotted the area, covered in etchings of ancient symbols Benson could not read. But most unexpected of all was the massive cave entrance, taller than even some of the trees. The large opening fed into a rocky mountain he had never seen before, indeed, one that no one had ever seen standing tall and proud in the middle of this forest. invisible to the rest of the world. "You can come closer if you like." Benson had been caught so off guard by this impressive sight, he had failed to notice the elderly woman sitting on one of the mounds of rock nearby. "Oh, hi," said Benson awkwardly. She smiled warmly, but said nothing. Benson approached closer, keeping a watchful eye on the cave entrance. "I'm, here to see the spirits?" "Yes," said the elderly woman. "All you need to do is approach their threshold, and they will come to meet you." Benson studied the cave entrance more and then looked at the elderly woman. She looked kind and warm, but very old. Her solid white hair was tied into a tight bun behind her head, and even sitting down, Benson could tell that she had a bit of a hunch in her posture. Nevertheless, she happily continued peeling some kind of exotic fruit Benson had never seen before, and popped small pieces into her mouth every so often. "Did you meet my brother?" asked Benson. "And I think someone else met my sister, a man?" The old woman paused mid-chew. "I don't think so. You are the only one I have seen so far." "Then I guess those were other people?" The old woman nodded. "I guess so." Benson looked back at the cave entrance, but he did not take a step forward. Gus, on the other hand, was now climbing the stone mound to investigate this old woman a bit more closely. "I like your cat," said the old woman. "Why did you bring him with you?" Benson looked back at the woman. "What? Oh, he was a gift from my parents. They passed away. That's why we're here." The old woman nodded sadly. "And you wanted to keep their memory close to you?" Benson nodded. "Yeah, something like that." Benson was quiet a moment before continuing. "My siblings thought it was silly of me to bring him, but I don't really think they understand. They're not the youngest. They had more time with mother and father. I didn't have that time with them. But Gus spends all his time with me. I didn't want to leave him behind now." The old woman said nothing. They both watched in silence as Gus circled around the old woman curiously. He then leaped off the rock and returned to Benson's side, apparently having lost interest. The old woman smiled. "Well, dear, I think it's time." Benson nodded. "Yeah. Okay, thank you." Benson looked ahead of him at the cave entrance and walked forward. As he walked forward, a blue haze seemed to slowly materialize within the cave. At first, he wasn't sure if it was just a trick of the light, but soon, the haze seemed to part itself into 3 distinct shapes. Slowly, the tall forms of 3 masked and hooded figures materialized from the cave. With every step he took, their forms appeared to him with more clarity, and with every step he took, Benson gulped. They were getting taller. Finally, he was standing just outside the cave. And there, standing just inside, peering down at him, were the 3 guardian spirits of his family's lineage. "Wow," was all he could say under his breath. Though now that he was here and up close, he didn't feel as frightened. A warm and pleasant breeze seemed to inexplicably float from within the cave to caress his face, and though their forms were undeniably impressive, spirits did not feel threatening or imposing. It was then that Benson remembered that these spirits were here to guard him and his siblings, their bloodline. But then Benson remembered that it had all come down to him now. He was the only candidate left. What would happen if even he failed too? He found himself saying aloud, "I am ready for the test." The spirits bowed with the utmost elegance and grace. In unison, they spoke with patience and respect in their voice.
Thank you, Benton. We are grateful for your visit. The time has come for the royal lineage to continue, and we are tasked to ensure that it continues down the best path possible.
Nervously, Benson shuffled his feet. A shiver of both amazement and pride ran down his spine. It is my honor to be in your presence. But what happens if I don't pass your test either?
You are young to carry this burden upon your shoulders. But take comfort in this, Benson. Your mother was the same age you are when she came before us. And she passed her own test. It is always possible that you could do the same.
Benson's eyes widened. My mother passed her test when she was my age?
Indeed. We asked a different question than we have your brothers and sisters. But no matter the test, and no matter the generation, it is always made clear in the end who is meant to inherit the throne.
Benson was quiet. He thought about his mother and about his father. For them. This was for them and for everything they had built in their lifetime. Benson glanced down and smiled at Gus, who was prowling behind his feet, quite wary of these blue amorphous giants. Okay, I'm ready. Again, the spirits bowed.
The success of your lineage is dependent on a great many things. Wisdom and perspective have many definitions and many paths down which they could lead. But there is another crucial part to the strength of your bloodline. Marriage.
At this, Benson frowned. What? There was a low and quiet rumble from the spirits, and Benson blushed as he realized that they had just laughed.
The strength of rulership often requires a collaboration, both of blood and of ideas. Generation after generation, your kingdom's success has been built not just on the merits of your ancestors, but on the strength of the marriages they have arranged, the relationships they have forged. And this, Benson, is where we will help the most.
How? Asked Benson.
Your soulmate, Benson. She exists, and we can show you her. This is what we showed your siblings as well. They each have a kindred soul that lives out there, a prince or princess from one of the many kingdoms across the land. Yours exists out there, and one day, when you are both older, you may marry her. But two things must happen before that.
What two things? Asked Benson, his curiosity growing with every word these spirits spoke.
First, you must pass our test. If you fail, you will not remember her when you leave our domain.
Okay. And second? Asked Benson. After I pass your test, what then?
Then you will have to pass hers. Someday, sometime, once you meet her. We cannot forge your relationship for you. We can only show you the kindred soul whose mind and bloodline are your perfect match. It is up to you from there to court her favor.
Benson was quiet. This was very unexpected. So, he hesitated. You're basically royal matchmakers? Again, a low rumble as the spirits chuckled.
It may sound strange to you, especially at your young age. But when you think about your mother and father as rulers, think about how they ruled. Together. They bolstered each other's strengths. They complemented each other's weaknesses. They found inspiration to do better in each other, and they each came from two very different cultures. There is nothing more powerful than the perfect harmony of two different entities. The children that they bore are proof. You and your siblings each carry a piece of both your parents. You have brought their differences together into one being.
Benson just nodded his head. Okay. He still didn't quite know what to say. Maybe I'll understand it better when I'm older.
We know you will, dear child. Until that time comes, however, are you ready to begin the test?
Benson took a deep breath. Yes. Yes, I am. For a brief moment, there was a blanket of calm silence across the entire forest clearing. Then, a stronger breeze began to blow. Leaves tumbled around in the air, the trees rustled with purpose. The spirits held their heads high.
Before one can hold power with their beloved, one must understand love itself. And so, our test for you and your siblings is a simple question.
Benson took a step back as suddenly 3 distinct mounds of stone began to rise out of the ground between him and the 3 spirits. The spirits continued.
Benson, we ask you now, what is the truest shape of love?
No sooner had they asked the question than the 3 stone mounds suddenly transformed before his very eyes. The first stone mound expanded and smoldered. Its surface began to boil with vibrant reds and oranges as if being heated from within. Soon enough, a new material solidified around the stone as it continued to change and morph its shape. And finally, there she was. A woman had just erupted out of the stone, carved out of pure gold, as beautiful as she was radiant, her gilded edges reflecting the sunlight with dazzling intensity. The second stone mound had changed as well. Where once was solid rock and ground had now transformed into something intricately organic. The surface of the mound had bloomed into an incredible matrix of vines, roots, and flowers. And soon enough, there she was again. The same woman as before, only this time, she seemed to be made out of foliage so perfect and colorful, one would only expect to see it in the gardens of paradise. The third stone mound transformed as well, but only in shape. The stone did not leave. If anything, it grew. Suddenly, the mound was no longer a mound, but a tall spire of sleek stone. Ripples across the surface of the rock seemed to erase any imperfections of organic ridges at all. And soon, the same woman was now standing before Benson once more, this time in the form of a tall, unmoving being of perfectly smooth, chiseled granite. The 3 figures of the same woman erupted out of the ground in a matter of seconds. Benson stood there mesmerized, with barely enough awareness of his surroundings to process the frightened snarl made by Gus, who then scampered away from the cave entrance. And as if this wasn't surprising enough, all 3 figures of the woman then moved, turning their heads to look down at Benson and give him a warm, kind smile. The 3 guardian spirits floated forward and continued to speak.
The truest shape of love may be anything. There is only one answer that we seek from you, but multiple options.
The spirit behind the woman's golden form floated forward.
A shape of wealth and prosperity. Is the truest shape of love a treasure of unending value? One that would make you richer in life and spirit than any amount of actual money could?
The spirit behind the woman's garden form floated forward.
Or a shape of growth and fertility. Is the truest shape of love a bursting of life and color and diversity? One that fills the soul and gives color to the world?
The spirit behind the woman's granite form floated forward.
or a shape of true strength and stability? Is the truest shape of love a foundation upon which any dream can be built? One that will never let you fall and never leave your side?
The spirits joined in unison once more.
What is the truest shape of love? Answer us this to pass our test.
Benson stared open-mouthed at the three figures, each of whom continued to smile back at him. This is her? This is my soulmate? This is who she will be when she grows up?
This is who she will be when you finally meet her. If you can remember her, you must first answer our question.
Benson sighed and rubbed his forehead. What had his siblings chosen? What had they gotten wrong? They're all equally important, aren't they? He asked hesitantly.
They are all important, and they can all be a beautiful part of your future relationship. But there is one shape here that is inherently the right choice. The truest shape of love.
Benson shook his head. I don't know. But the spirits maintained composure.
Do not be alarmed, Benson. It will take some time, and that's okay.
Benson exhaled again, feeling a bit panicked. How could he let himself forget something as important as his soulmate? And how could he allow his parents' kingdom to go on without an heir? What would they say? What would his siblings say? What would his parents have said if they could be there with him? Instinctively, Benson glanced down to look for Gus, the last living memory he had to himself of his parents. When he didn't see the cat behind his feet, however, he wheeled around, remembering only now that Gus had run away. He gave a sigh of relief when he saw Gus curled up anxiously on the stone mound, right next to the elderly woman. Right next to... Benson stared. A full minute must have gone by. Benson was still staring. Was that it? Was it that simple?
Benson? We know it is difficult, but you must give us your answer soon.
Benson glanced back at the spirits, and then back at the elderly woman. I think I know the answer. Benson let out a laugh. He then turned back to look at the spirits. That was a trick. There is one shape here that is the truest shape of love.
Yes, Benson. It seems you've seen through the trick and found the true answer.
Benson looked back at the old woman. The spirits continued.
But to truly resolve this, once and for all, you must tell us why she is the truest shape of love.
Benson was quiet a moment. He nodded his head, formulating his thoughts carefully. Because, he finally said, she is the shape of time. And when you have time with a person, you can have all the shapes in the world. Back out in the middle of the forest, sitting next to the ancient tree stump, Benson's older three siblings were waiting patiently. The days had not worn off completely, but they were lucid enough to begin worrying about him. He's only been gone 15 or so minutes, same as you. I know, but we don't remember what happened. Maybe he... The eldest brother suddenly pointed his finger and shouted, "There! He's coming now!" Benson was walking up the path to meet them, Gus perched on his shoulders. And he wasn't lost in a daze. He was smiling. The three siblings watched in a mixture of confusion and understanding as Benson walked towards them. No, there's no way," muttered the older sister. I think so," responded the eldest brother. The younger sister walked forward and enveloped Benson in a large embrace. "Please tell me you remember." "I do," Benson said simply, a shy smile on his face. His sibling stared in disbelief. Benson just shrugged. I don't know what to say. There was a moment of silence before the eldest brother stepped forward, a knowing grin on his face. I think we do. He got down on one knee and bent his head down. Smiling, Benson's two sisters did the same. All hail the king, they said together. Benson blushed. We don't need to do that. But Benson was suddenly locked in a powerfully warm embrace from all of them. Congratulations, they said happily. Benson grinned sheepishly. When the embrace was finally broken, the next question was very much expected. So, what was it? What was the test? And what were we forgetting that was just so amazing? Benson looked between all of them. I'll tell you on the way back. What? Exclaimed his eldest sister. Oh, come on, can't you tell us right now? I will once we start walking. It's sort of a long story, I guess, if I want to tell it right. But I will say I think I owe you all a gift, right? There was a pause of confusion before they remembered the deal they had struck the night before. Oh, Benson, you don't have to do that. That was a joke. I already did, said Benson simply. I made a deal with the spirits. Once we get back to the kingdom, they'll restore your memories so you can all remember what was so lovely about who you saw in there. The look on their faces was priceless, a complete mix of awe, excitement, and confusion. Benson chuckled to himself and started moving forward. Wait, said his brother. What do you mean who we saw in there? Benson gave them a knowing smile. Like I said, kind of a long story. He turned and continued walking. But don't worry. We've got time.
End of submission. Submission status: fact, fiction, uncertain.
Fiction. This is an old legend from a kingdom on the planet Rythor, near the Great Owl Nebula. Their governments consolidate power through diplomatic marriages, but it seems they take the long-term strength of these marriages very seriously. They care about it being more than just a contract. I was near Rythor to visit some old acquaintances, and they were kind enough to give me this story for the road. I'm glad I found it. End of submission.
Error.
What?
Error. Submissions unavailable.
What? Since when?
Error. Submissions unavailable. Please try again later.
And... why is this happening?
Connection interference. Submissions unavailable. Please try again later.
Well... shit.
This is A.B. Narayan. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode of Bards Atlas. The Shape of Love was inspired by a painting created by artist Christopher Balaskas. It is entitled Ancestral Spirits and is available for print at inprint.com, spelled INPRNT.com. Link available in the description. This episode was written and performed by A.B. Narayan. Music and editing also by A.B. Narayan. Cover art by Anton Amstad. Bards Atlas is a narrative and lore-building podcast that follows Fox and Eli, two traveling bards seeking new knowledge and stories across the universe. If you'd like to get in touch with us or submit a work of art to inspire a future episode, send an email to bardsatlas@gmail.com or find us on Facebook and Twitter. Don't forget to leave a comment and a rating on iTunes. It'll really help us out a lot. And as always, thank you so much for listening.